The U.S. Justice Department targeted the state of California and is suing the state for interfering with the enforcement of federal immigration laws. Now, the state's governor said the move is, quote, a reign of terror on hardworking people. The federal government is taking aim at so-called sanctuary policies, which are designed to protect undocumented immigrants from deportation. Now, this latest strike comes just a week after ICE agents arrested more than 230 people for immigration violations in California. Now, according to the U.S. government's own data, more than half of the immigrants arrested in the sweep did not have criminal convictions. Stricter immigration enforcement is one of the U.S. Attorney General's top priorities, and a key part of that effort involves cracking down primarily on Democratic-led cities and states. Now, there is a lot at play right here. Now, this latest strike comes just a week after ICE agents arrested more than 230 people for immigration violations. Now, according to the U.S. government's own data, more than half of the immigrants arrested in the sweep did not have criminal convictions. Stricter immigration enforcement is one of the U.S. Attorney General's top priorities, and that's also a key part of the effort, and it involves cracking down primarily on these coastal states, which tend to be democratically led.
But California, we have a problem. A series of actions and events has occurred here that directly and adversely impact the work of our federal officers. For example, the mayor of Oakland has been actively seeking to help illegal aliens avoid apprehension by ICE.
We have millions of people who are here without papers, and some of them have been working for 10, 15, 20 years. They've been serving the economy. A lot of them are doing the dirty work, whether it's washing dishes or picking fruit in the field. And now the Attorney General is basically initiating a reign of terror.
Now, here to help us understand these issues surrounding this case is David Bier. He's an immigration policy analyst at the Cato Institute. Welcome, David. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So there's so many complications with this issue. Can you explain to me this DOJ case? What legs does it have to stand on?
Well, this is a case that really raises some interesting legal questions that haven't really been raised in many years. So really the laws that are being challenged here are three quite different efforts by California to protect undocumented immigrants. The first law deals with what private employers in the state can do when federal immigration enforcement comes knocking at the door. And that law requires employers in California to tell those agents to go away and get a court order if they want to access the private property and the records of that employer to see if they can find unauthorized immigrants among their workforce. The second law is a law that requires the Attorney General of California to inspect immigrant detention facilities where illegal immigrants are being held in the state of California. And the third law is the most important one, and that one focuses on what law enforcement in California can do to cooperate with the federal government, and that says that they cannot tell the federal government when they are going to release someone from their custody who's in the country illegally or otherwise, or hold them and transfer them to federal immigration authorities unless they've committed some certain serious violent crimes.
So those are the facts of this actions, but what about the DOJ's authority? Does it have the right to do this?
Well, they certainly can file a lawsuit. Whether it will be borne out, whether the courts will side with them or not remains to be seen. The authority of California to regulate the private employers' response to federal agents is probably the weakest point that California has. That authority seems to be pretty clearly within the federal government's purview to regulate how private employers respond to federal immigration agents. The law regulating how they deal with their own law enforcement officials, however, is much stronger, legally speaking, because ultimately how the state of California spends their resources is up to state officials under our federalist system of government, where the states have authority over how they spend their resources and implement laws that affect the state.
So you're hinting at these states' rights at the moment, and there seems to be some friction right now between what the federal government wants and the ability of states to sort of defend their positions. We know that along the coast there are some pretty concentrated pockets of Democrats, and political views are different from, say, the heartland of the USA. Is this a case that illustrates that clash?
I think so, and I think it's interesting that the Attorney General went to California to lay out his arguments directly to the people of California, because it's an argument that resonates outside of the state, but there are not too many sympathetic ears within that state, and his lawsuit, I think, is going to be fought quite vigorously by the officials there in the state of California.
So what about the Fourth Amendment? Does it apply to immigration?
It's a great question. So yes, the Fourth Amendment applies throughout the United States, but there are differing levels of protection given to individuals depending on the authority being exercised. And so in a criminal context, if the federal government is trying to find evidence within your home, a court order, a judicial court order is certainly required. But in the context of the administrative enforcement of laws dealing with employers, typically the federal government does not need a warrant for what's called civil offenses, and that's what's at issue here, violations of non-criminal laws that could result in penalties and fines, but not necessarily jail time, though some of the employers could also be put in jail in addition to the fine. So it's certainly a complex issue, and the courts will have to sort through all of these issues.
It's complex, and this in some ways can be interpreted as maybe just one strike. Do you think that the DOJ might be also targeting other states? Could there be more lawsuits filed, say, for example, towards New York or some of the more other liberal states in the USA?
Well, this is certainly the first of many to come, I expect. Other states and municipalities are adopting similar statutes, but I think this is the test case. If the courts side with the Attorney General on this, that will really provide an opening for more lawsuits against other states and localities.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your insight. This is the developing story. Thank you.